Imagine a frozen lake, stretching endlessly under a pale winter sky. The wind bites at your face. The ice groans beneath the weight of thousands of armored men. It's 1242, and the future of Europe hangs on the edge of a sword. Or perhaps on a frozen sheet of water. How could this happen? How could one small principality, barely holding onto its lands, stop the might of the Teutonic Knights? A military force feared across Europe. And why has this moment, one of the most dramatic battles of the Middle Ages, nearly slipped from our collective memory? This is the story of the battle on the ice, where courage, strategy, and the harsh winter collided to change history. Today, we're stepping back in time to explore the invasion of Rus, the legendary victory of Alexander Nevsky, and the lasting impact this battle had on the shape of Europe. The early 13th century was a turbulent era in Eastern Europe. The Rus' principalities, spread across modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and the Baltic region, were fragmented yet proud. Each principality had its own prince, its own army, its own local politics. But they shared a common heritage and faith: Orthodox Christianity. Meanwhile, to the west, a formidable force was rising. The Teutonic Knights, a militant religious order born during the Crusades, had already carved a brutal reputation. They saw themselves as the guardians of Christendom. Yet their methods were anything but gentle. With well-trained knights, devastating cavalry charges, and a zeal for conquest, they swept through territories, establishing fortresses, imposing new taxes, and converting or crushing the locals. By 1240, the Teutonic Knights had reached the borders of the Novgorod Republic, eyeing the rich trade routes of the region. The Rus people were accustomed to threats from nomadic raiders, but nothing compared to the might of the Teutonic Knights. Villages burned, fields were trampled, and refugees fled in panic across frozen rivers and forests. Chronicles from the period describe the terror in towns like Pskov, where families huddled in their homes, hoping that the ice and the forests might shield them from the approaching invaders. The Knights' military organization was perhaps their greatest strength. Each warrior was a product of rigorous training, often beginning in childhood as a page before advancing to squire and finally to knight. Their armor, while heavy, sometimes weighing over 80 pounds, was expertly crafted to distribute weight and provide maximum protection. Their war horses, bred for strength and endurance, were themselves fearsome weapons. In traditional battlefield encounters, a single cavalry charge from the Teutonic Knights could shatter infantry lines and decide entire campaigns. Fortified strongholds fell before them. Entire regions submitted rather than face their assault. At the center of Rus' resistance was Alexander Nevsky, a young prince who combined political acumen with military skill. Unlike many rulers of the era, Nevsky understood the importance of terrain, timing, and morale. He knew he could not face the Teutonic Knights head-on in open battle. Their heavy armor and disciplined formations would crush any conventional force. Instead, he looked for a place where the enemy's strengths could be turned into weaknesses. A place where the land itself would fight alongside him. That place was Lake Peipus, a vast, shallow lake straddling modern Estonia and Russia. It froze solid in winter, creating a slippery, treacherous surface. Nevsky anticipated the battle months in advance, positioning scouts to monitor enemy movements, coordinating with local villages for supplies, and training his troops to fight on ice. Light infantry who could move quickly, outmaneuver the slow, heavy knights, and exploit the lake itself as a weapon. He studied how ice behaves under stress, how weight distributes across frozen water, and how panic spreads faster than any arrow. His preparation was meticulous, almost prescient. The winter of 1241 to 1242 was particularly brutal, with ice thick enough to support armies but brittle enough to be dangerous. Nevsky's scouts reported that the Teutonic Knights were indeed marching toward Novgorod, confident and unaware of the trap being laid. Local Rus' commanders were nervous. Many advocated for retreat, for fortifying cities rather than meeting the invaders in open battle. But Nevsky held firm. He believed that a decisive victory, achieved on terms favorable to his forces, would break the Knights' momentum and secure the future of his people. By March 1242, the Teutonic Knights had crossed the border, confident in their superiority. They underestimated the harsh Russian winter and the cunning of Nevsky's strategy. This was no ordinary battle. It was a collision of cultures, faiths, and ideologies, with the frozen lake poised to become both battlefield and instrument of destiny. The stage was set for a confrontation that could determine not just the survival of Novgorod, but the future of Eastern Europe itself. April 5th, 1242. The frozen surface of Lake Peipus stretched endlessly, blanketed in snow. A bitter wind cut through armor and clothing, carrying the cries of soldiers, the neighing of horses, and the echo of distant commands. Thousands had gathered. On one side, the Russ's forces, lightly armored, nimble, and prepared to use the ice to their advantage. On the other, the Teutonic Knights, encased in heavy steel, their banners snapping proudly in the wind. The morning light reflected harshly off the white expanse, and visibility was limited. The knights, accustomed to fighting in open fields and fortified positions, felt the disorientation immediately. The Russ's forces, by contrast, moved with purpose. Nevsky had positioned his archers and light cavalry in strategic locations along the lake's perimeter, hidden behind drifts and natural rises in the ice. Nevsky's strategy was simple but brilliant. He placed his infantry in a defensive formation, ready to absorb the initial cavalry charge. His flanks were guarded, but not too tightly, allowing him to lure the knights into traps. Scouts positioned on nearby hills monitored enemy movements, sending back warnings of weaknesses in the knights' formation. Every man under Nevsky's command knew the ice could be their ally, or their enemy. One misstep, one poorly weighted charge, and the lake could swallow a knight whole. The Teutonic Knights advanced in their traditional wedge formation, designed to pierce enemy lines like a lance through cloth. It had worked countless times before. It had broken armies and terrified populations. The weight of their cavalry, the glint of their polished armor, the precision of their maneuvers, all were meant to inspire confidence in themselves and terror in their opponents. Their commander, likely confident based on previous victories, saw no reason why this battle would differ from others. When the battle began, the Teutonic Knights advanced with confidence, expecting to smash through the Russ's lines. At first, it seemed their power would prevail. Horses thundered across the frozen lake, armored knights cutting down infantry in their path. The impact was devastating. The first wave of Russ's infantry fell before the advancing wall of steel and horseflesh. For a moment, it appeared that superior training and equipment would prove decisive once again. But the ice was unpredictable. As the weight of the knights bore down, concentrated and relentless, the ice groaned and cracked beneath them. Some sections gave way entirely, plunging men and horses into the freezing waters below. The shock was immediate and catastrophic. A knight in full armor, suddenly submerged in water below freezing, had perhaps minutes before the cold claimed him. Horses, panicked by the sudden collapse, thrashed and worsened the crisis, cracking ice further and dragging nearby riders down with them. Nevsky's forces exploited this with precision. Arrows rained down from concealed positions, and infantry used long pikes and spears to destabilize enemy formations. The knights, trained for traditional battlefield encounters, struggled to maintain cohesion on the brittle surface. What had seemed like certainty moments before transformed into chaos. Panic spread among the invaders, turning a disciplined army into a chaotic mass. Men shouted warnings, horses screamed, and the ice itself seemed to betray those who stood upon it. The Russ's soldiers, lighter, faster, and far more familiar with the terrain, struck with deadly efficiency. The knights attempted to regroup, tried to fall back to safer ground, but retreat across the crumbling ice proved nearly impossible. Those who made it to the lake's edge found Russ's cavalry waiting, fresh and ready to cut off escape routes. The battle transformed from a contested engagement into a rout. Men who had served as elite warriors mere hours before now fought desperately for survival against an enemy they had vastly underestimated. By midday, the tide had fully turned. The Teutonic Knights were trapped, their advance halted, and retreat became impossible without risking death in the icy waters. Nevsky's cavalry executed a final flanking maneuver, collapsing the knights from both sides. When the battle ended, the lake was littered with fallen soldiers, shattered banners, and a stunned silence. The Rus had achieved what seemed impossible, a decisive victory against one of Europe's most feared military forces. Beyond the battlefield, the victory sent shockwaves across the region. For the people of Novgorod, it was a moment of divine vindication. For Nevsky, it was a cementing of legacy, a testament to leadership, strategy, and the ability to turn natural forces into an ally. Over centuries, this battle would be immortalized in Russian chronicles, folk songs, and religious iconography, making Nevsky not just a prince, but a symbol of resilience and cunning. The impact of the battle on the ice went far beyond the frozen shores of Lake Peipus. For the Teutonic Knights, it was a stunning defeat. Their eastward expansion halted, their aura of invincibility shattered, and their morale deeply shaken. This loss would influence subsequent campaigns, forcing the Knights to reconsider their strategies and focus on consolidation rather than aggressive conquest. The myth of their invulnerability, a myth that had served them well in recruitment and negotiations, was now broken. Future adversaries would think twice before surrendering without a fight. In Novgorod and the surrounding Rus' principalities, the victory brought a period of relative stability. Trade routes, once threatened by invasion, remained open. Merchants from the Baltic could once again safely conduct business with Russian territories. Villages and towns rebuilt, and a sense of unity strengthened across the region. Nevsky's reputation as a leader grew exponentially. Not just as a warrior, but as a shrewd statesman, he navigated the delicate balance of diplomacy and military might, negotiating with neighboring powers while ensuring the safety and autonomy of his people. The battle also demonstrated something fundamental about warfare itself. That overwhelming force, when applied without understanding one's environment, can fail spectacularly. The Teutonic Knights had conquered much of the Baltic through superior training and organization, yet on Lake Peipus, those very advantages became liabilities. Their heavy armor and disciplined formations, magnificent on open plains, became burdens on cracking ice. This lesson would echo through military history for centuries. Strategy and terrain matter as much as equipment and training. Politically, the victory allowed Novgorod to maintain its independence from both the Teutonic Knights to the west and the rising power of the Mongol Empire to the east. While other Rus' principalities eventually fell under Mongol dominance, Novgorod retained its autonomy. This independence fostered continued commercial development and cultural flourishing. The city became a hub of trade, culture, and learning, influencing the development of the region in ways that might have been impossible under foreign occupation. But the battle's significance extended beyond politics and borders. It became a story of hope and resilience, a narrative that even the most powerful empire could be checked by ingenuity and courage. The battle on the ice symbolized the importance of understanding one's environment, the power of strategy over brute force, and the role of leadership in shaping destiny. For Europe, the ripple effects were subtle but enduring. The Teutonic Knights, once unstoppable, faced setbacks that limited their expansion into Eastern Europe. Rus' principalities retained their independence, allowing the culture, language, and faith of the region to survive and thrive. In essence, a single day on a frozen lake helped shape the political and cultural landscape of Eastern Europe for centuries to come. The battle also influenced how future military commanders approached unconventional warfare. Nevsky's victory demonstrated that superior tactics and environmental knowledge could overcome superior weaponry, a principle that would inform military strategy long after the 13th century. Even today, military academies study the battle on the ice as a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare and the importance of understanding one's opponent's weaknesses. Even today, the battle on the ice reminds historians and storytellers that history often hinges on extraordinary moments where leadership, courage, and natural forces converge. It is a testament to the human spirit, proving that even against overwhelming odds, a smaller, determined force can leave a mark on the world that echoes across generations. Yet in America, this pivotal moment remains largely unknown. We study European military history extensively, yet the stories that shaped the continent often remain Eurocentric, overlooking the Eastern victories that proved equally transformative. The battle on the ice deserves recognition not just as a Russian triumph, but as a European one, a moment when the course of history shifted on frozen water. when a young prince's vision and courage prevented an entire region from being overrun. Alexander Nevsky's name should stand alongside other great medieval commanders, not because he conquered the most territory or amassed the greatest wealth, but because he understood something more profound: that true leadership means protecting your people, adapting to your circumstances, and using every advantage, including the very land beneath your feet, to secure their freedom. On April 5, 1242, he did exactly that. The ice has long since melted, the warriors have turned to dust, and Lake Peipus continues its quiet existence on the border between Estonia and Russia. But the battle fought upon it remains immortal, a reminder that the greatest victories often come not from overwhelming force, but from vision, preparation, and the courage to face the impossible. Thank you for watching. I'd love to hear where you're watching from. And if this story gave you a new perspective on history, drop a comment below. If you enjoy learning about these lesser-known moments that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. See you in the next video.